Welcome to the Futuristic Adventures story. Here you find the best HFY story written by human. Listen the story. If you like it, subscribe the channel.
You call me small, but my love for you is bigger than the stars. Welcome to the world of science fiction. Comment below where in the world you are watching from today. And if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. The Interstellar Marketplace on Zork 7 was a kaleidoscope of chaos, filled with traders shouting in every known language, the hum of anti-grav carts weaving through the crowd, and the occasional burst of laughter from merchants haggling over outrageous deals. Trent had been to dozens of such markets across the galaxy. But Zork 7 always held a certain charm. Maybe it was the warm, glowing lantern strung above the bazaar, or the tantalizing aroma of alien spices that made the air feel alive. Whatever it was, he couldn't help but feel at home amidst the noise and activity. He strolled through the crowded lanes, scanning the wares on display. His long coat swayed behind him as he adjusted the strap of the satchel slung over his shoulder, which carried a collection of trade goods from his last haul. Trent wasn't looking for anything in particular, but he had a habit of keeping his eyes open. After all, the best deals were always the ones you didn't expect. That's when he saw her. Her booth was modest, a small setup wedged between two larger, flashier displays. Yet there was something about it that caught Trent's attention. The alien merchant stood on a stool to better meet the eyes of her towering customers, her dim in a frame, a stark contrast to the chaotic energy of the market. She was no more than 4 feet tall, with smooth, shimmering purple skin that seemed to reflect the light of the lanterns overhead. Her large golden eyes glowed with intelligence as she haggled with a customer twice her size, her voice sharp and confident. "No, no, no," she said, waving her small hands in exasperation. "You think I don't know the value of this artifact? Do I look like someone who was born yesterday? Either pay the asking price or take your clumsy bartering to someone else." The customer, a burly alien with scales running down his neck, looked momentarily taken aback, then grumbling under his breath, he slapped a handful of credits onto her counter and stomped away. The tiny merchant swept up the credits with a smug smile and tucked them into a lockbox. Trent couldn't help but chuckle. She was feisty, no doubt about that. Intrigued, he approached her booth, taking a moment to examine the items on display. It was a treasure trove of rare and unusual artifacts, shimmering crystals, intricately carved trinkets, and a few items that looked like they came from long-forgotten civilizations. "Impressive collection," Trent said, leaning casually on the counter. "You always scare off your customers. Or was that a special case?" The merchant glanced up at him, her golden eyes narrowing. "If you're here to waste my time, move along. I don't deal with tourists who think they can charm me into giving them a discount." Trent raised his hands in mock surrender, a grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I'm not a tourist, I'm a trader like you. And I wasn't looking for a discount, just appreciating the craftsmanship." Her gaze softened slightly, but she still looked wary. "A trader? Oh, what are you dealing?" "Whatever pays," Trent replied, "mostly tech and rare minerals, but I have a soft spot for the unique." He gestured to her booth. "And you've got plenty of that." The merchant hesitated, then seemed to decide. "He wasn't a threat." "Named Zyla," she said, stepping down from her stool to stand on the ground. She barely reached Trent's waist, but her presence was anything but small. "And you're right, my collection is unique. Everything here has a story, and I don't sell to people who won't appreciate that." "Fair enough," Trent said, nodding. "On Trent, by the way, and for the record, I'm a big fan of stories." Zyla raised an eyebrow, her lips quirking in a small smile. "Is that so? Well, in that case," she picked up a small, intricately carved orb from her display and held it up. "This is a relic from the Fka Nebula, crafted by a civilization that disappeared centuries ago. It's said to hold a fragment of their knowledge, but no one's been able to unlock its secrets." Interested, Trent leaned in to get a closer look. The orb shimmered with an iridescent glow, its surface etched with patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. "Very interested. What's your price?" 5,000 credits, Zyla said without hesitation. Trent let out a low whistle. "Steep. You're not making it easy to impress you, are you?" "Why should I?" she shot back. "If you can't afford it, move along." Trent laughed, holding up his hands again. All right. Let's not start negotiating yet. I'm just getting to know you." Zyla rolled her eyes. "Getting to know me? or trying to distract me from making a sale. Maybe a little of both, Trent admitted, flashing a grin, but mostly I'm just curious. You've got a sharp tongue for someone so compact. Her eyes narrowed, but there was a hint of amusement in her expression. Careful human, I may be small, but I've taken down creatures twice your size. I don't doubt it, Trent said. You've got fire, Xyla. I like that. For a moment she seemed caught off guard by the sincerity in his voice, but then she shook her head as if brushing off the thought. Flattery won't get you anywhere with me, noted, Trent said, still smiling. He reached into his satchel and pulled out a small crystal, its surface glowing with a faint blue light. How about a trade? This is a Glan energy crystal, perfect for powering small devices or impressing buyers who like shiny things. Isla's eyes lit up with interest, but she quickly masked it with a neutral expression. Not bad, she said, taking the crystal and inspecting it closely. It's genuine, I'll give you that, but it's not worth 5,000 credits. Maybe not, Trent said, leaning on the counter again. But it's a start, isn't it? Xyla considered him for a moment, then set the crystal down. Fine. I'll give you a partial trade, but if you want the FGAR relic, you'll need to pay the difference. Deal, Trent said, offering his hand. Xyla hesitated, then shook it. Her hand was small but firm, and for a brief moment their eyes met. Trent felt a spark of something: interest, curiosity, maybe even admiration. But before he could dwell on it, Xyla pulled her hand away and returned to her work. As Trent walked away from the booth, the relic safely tucked into his satchel, he couldn't help but glance back. Xyla was back on her stool, haggling with another customer, her voice sharp and confident as ever. He didn't know why, but he had a feeling their paths would cross again, and when they did, he was determined to learn more about the small merchant with the big presence. Trent had spent years navigating the galaxy, jumping from one bustling port to another, but the memory of Zilla lingered in his mind longer than he expected. There was something about her fire and sharp wit, the way she carried herself despite her small stature, that made him smile every time he thought about their brief encounter back aboard the stellar wind. He placed the FGAR relic on the control console, its shifting patterns casting faint multicolored light across the cockpit. He leaned back in the pilot's chair, sipping from a cup of lukewarm synth coffee, studying the artifact with an expression torn between curiosity and skepticism. All right, little orb, he muttered, spinning it idly with his fingers. What secrets are you hiding? And why is everyone so interested in you? The ship's outdated AI, lovingly nicknamed Chip by Trent, chimed in through the console speakers, warning, please refrain from handling unidentified artifacts without proper analysis. The probability of triggering a catastrophic event is relax. Chip, Trent said, cutting him off. I've got it under control. Besides, it's just an old relic, per more as a paperweight than anything else. Chip's voice remained flat, but there was a definite edge of annoyance. Captain Trent, I must insist on performing a scan. The object is emitting faint energy signals consistent with pre-collapse technologies that caught Trent's attention. He frowned, placing the relic back on the console. Pre-collapse? Huh, now you've got my attention. Go ahead. Run your scan. A faint hum filled the cockpit as Chip sensors locked onto the artifact. The relic seemed to shimmer more brightly under the scanner's light, its shifting patterns becoming almost hypnotic. Trent leaned forward, his curiosity mounting as the AI processed the data. Scan complete. Chip finally announced the artifact contains an internal power source and appears to be linked to a dormant energy signature. Additional analysis indicates it is more than a decorative object. However, I am unable to determine its exact purpose. Dormant energy signature, Trent repeated, scratching his chin. Sounds like something worth digging into. Might be more valuable than I thought. His musings were interrupted by the sharp chime of an incoming transmission. Trent tapped a button on the console, and a holographic image flickered to life in front of him. It was a reptilian trader he recognized from the Zork 7 marketplace, one of the many faces he passed on his way to Xyla's booth. The trader's yellow eyes glinted with a predatory gleam. Trent, the reptilian hissed, word around the marketplace is that you've got something valuable in your possession, something you acquired from a certain small merchant. Trent's easygoing demeanor didn't falter, but his hand and instinctively move to the relic, pulling it out of view. I pick up a lot of things during my runs. You're going to have to be more specific. The Trador fork tongue flicked out briefly. Don't play games with me, human. The Ranka relic handed over, and I might let you keep your ship in one piece. Trent jaw tightened. Not interested in handing over anything, pal. You're welcome to make me an offer if you want to negotiate. Negotiate? The reptilian let out a sharp laugh. The Syndicate doesn't negotiate, Trent, they take, and you've made the mistake of taking what's ours. The transmission cut off abruptly, and an alarm blared through the ship. Chip's voice crackled over the speakers, warning multiple hostile ships. Detected incoming pursuit vessels on intercept course. Great, Trent muttered, springing into action. He strapped himself into the pilot's chair and grabbed the controls. Chip, warm up the engines. Let's see if we can lose these guys. The stellar wind shuddered as the engines roared to life, and Trent guided the ship into a sharp ascent, weaving through the dense asteroid belt that surrounded Zorks 7. Behind him, the glowing lights of 3 Syndicate ships came into view, their weapon systems charging. Evasive maneuvers activated. Chip reported, though I must remind you, Captain, that our shields are at 72% capacity, and engaging multiple hostiles is statistically inadvisable, noted. Trent said through gritted teeth. He banked hard to the left, narrowly avoiding a volley of laser fire. But I don't think these guys are going to take no for an answer. The cockpit shook violently as one of the shots grazed the hull, sending sparks flying. Trent cursed under his breath, his mind racing for a solution. The Syndicate ships were faster and better armed, and the asteroid field, while providing cover, was also a dangerous maze that could tear his ship apart if he wasn't careful. Chip, give me options. He barked, his fingers flying over the controls. The nearest safe port is approximately 30 light-years away. The AI responded, however. I recommend seeking temporary refuge on Zork 7 until reinforcements arrive. Not going back there, Trent said. They'll have the whole planet locked down in no time. We need another plan. As if on cue, a familiar voice crackled over the ship's comm system. Trent, are you seriously getting into trouble already? It hasn't even been a day. His heart skipped a beat. Scylla, the comms flickered, and her image appeared on the screen. She was seated in her own cockpit, her golden eyes narrowed in annoyance. You're broadcasting like a beacon. What did you do? Nothing, Trent said defensively. Okay, maybe I bought something off you that a bunch of criminals think belongs to them. Any chance you want to help me out? Scylla sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. Why am I not surprised? Fine, transmitting coordinates. Meet me at these jump points, and don't get yourself killed before I get there on it, Trent said, his mood lifting slightly. He cut the comms and adjusted the ship's trajectory to match the coordinates she'd sent. Chip, calculate the fastest route to the jump point. Let's give these guys the slip. The stellar wind weaved through the asteroid field with practiced precision, Trent's hands steady on the controls behind him. The Syndicate ships continued their pursuit, their firepower relentless, but as the ship neared the jump point, Silas' voice came through the comms again. All right, Trent, I'm in position. When I say go, activate your jump drive and follow my lead. Got it, Trent replied, his eyes locked on the navigational display. The Syndicate ships were closing in fast, their weapons lighting up the darkness of space. His heart raced as he prepared for what came next. Voice rang out. Trent hit the jump drive, and the stellar wind surged forward, the stars outside blurring into streaks of light. For a moment, everything went still, the chaos of the chase fading into the background. When they emerged on the other side of the jump, Silas' ship was waiting, her small but sleek vessel glowing faintly against the void. Trent let out a breath. He didn't realize he'd been holding and activated the comms. Nice timing, he said. I owe you one. You owe me more than one. Zyla shot back. Now, let's figure out what we're dealing with before those goons catch up to us. As Trent looked at her determined expression on the screen, he couldn't help but smile. Maybe this partnership wasn't such a bad idea after all. The calm after the jump was a deceptive lull. Trent leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair as the stellar wind coasted to match Zyla's smaller ship's position. Outside, the void stretched endlessly, sprinkled with distant stars. For the first time in hours, there was no laser fire, no explosions, and no Syndicate goons breathing down his neck. But the peace wouldn't last. He knew that Zyla's voice crackled over the comms, pulling him back to the present. All right, Trent, We got a temporary breather, but those syndicate ships aren't going to stop. They'll be tracking us through the relic's energy signature. We need to figure out what's inside that thing before it gets both of us killed." Trent glanced at the artifact, still sitting on the console, its surface shimmering with those mesmerizing patterns. "You're welcome to take a look if you think you can crack it open," he replied. Chip scans picked up some dormant energy signatures, but we couldn't figure out much else. "I'm not coming onto your disaster of a ship just yet," Zila retorted, her voice dripping with exasperation. "Transfer the data to me, and I'll analyze it on my end." Disaster of a ship, Trent feigned defense. "The stellar wind has character." "Thank you very much." Character, Zila scoffed. "I'd call it barely held together by duct tape and wishful thinking." The duct tape is a critical component of the structural integrity," Trent joked, sending the scan data to her console. "All right, data's on its way. Let's see if you can impress me with your genius." Zila muttered something under her breath, something that sounded suspiciously like "You're impossible." Before the columns fell silent, leaving Trent alone with his thoughts and the faint hum of the ship's systems. A few minutes later, Zila's voice came back, this time tinged with a mix of curiosity and concern. "Okay, Trent, I've gone through the scans. This isn't just a relic, it's a key." "A key," Trent repeated, sitting up straighter. "To what? I'm not sure yet," Zila admitted, "but the energy signature it's emitting, it's ancient pre-collapse tech. Like your AI said, if the syndicate's this desperate to get their hands on it, then whatever it unlocks must be significant." Trent frowned, staring at the artifact, as if it might suddenly spill its secrets. "So what do? We can't keep running forever. Sooner or later they're going to catch up. We need to get ahead of them," Zila said firmly. "Find out what this key unlocks and use it to our advantage. There's a research outpost on Remar 9 that specializes in ancient tech. If anyone can decode this thing, it's them." Remara 9, Trent let out a low whistle. "That's deep in neutral space. It's going to be crawling with syndicate spies." Zila didn't miss a beat. "Then we stay under the radar. I'll send you coordinates for a hidden trade route that'll keep us off their sensors. But if you're having second thoughts, now's the time to back out." Trent smirked, his hand brushing the controls. "Backing out? That's not my style. Besides, I'd hate to miss out on the chance to see your genius in action. Flattery doesn't work on me." Zila shot back, though there was a hint of amusement in her tone. "Letton, just focus on staying alive." As the coordinates came through, Trent adjusted the ship's course, falling into formation with Zila's vessel. The trade route she'd sent was a winding path through uncharted territory, far from the usual shipping lanes. It wasn't without its risks, but it was their best shot at avoiding detection. The journey through the hidden route was quiet at first, the only sounds in the cockpit the occasional hum of the engines and Chip's monotone status updates. Trent found himself glancing at the comm screen more often than necessary, half expecting Zila to call in with some sharp mark or a new piece of intel. She didn't, and the silence only made him more restless. After what felt like hours, the comms crackled to life. "Trent, we've got company." His heart jumped, and he immediately scanned the sensors. "Syndicate?" "No," Zila replied, her voice tense. "Worse, pirates." Trent cursed under his breath as his sensors picked up the incoming vessels. There were 3 of them, all sleek and fast, their hulls adorned with the telltale markings of independent raiders. Pirates were a wild card, less organized than the syndicate, but just as dangerous, especially in numbers. "They must have picked up our trail through the trade routes," Zila continued. "We're too far from Rara 9 to jump." "What's the plan?" "What's planned?" Trent said, his fingers flying over the controls. "We improvise. Can your ship handle a fight? It's not built for combat." "But I can hold my own," Zila replied. "Just don't expect me to save your sorry hide if you do something stupid." "Wouldn't dream of it," Trent said with a grin, even as the first shots from the pirate ships lit up the void around them. The stellar wind banked hard to avoid the incoming fire, its engines roaring in protest. Trent pushed the ship to its limits, weaving through the narrow gaps between asteroids in a desperate attempt to shake their pursuers. Zila's ship followed close behind, her smaller size giving her an edge in maneuverability. "Chip, give me some good news," Trent called out, his hands gripping the controls. "The pirate vessels are maintaining pursuit The AI reported, however, their shields appear to be weaker than standard syndicate ships. A direct hit to their engines could disable them. Great, Trent muttered. If only we had better weapons. Isla's voice cut in over the comms. I've got an idea. Trent, do you still have that cargo of gland crystals? Trent blinked. Yeah. Why load them into your ship's rear ejector and release them on my signals? Isla instructed. They're highly reactive. If we time it right, we can create an explosion big enough to knock out the pirates. Trent hesitated for only a moment before nodding. All right, but if this backfires, I'm blaming you. Noted. Zyla said. Dry. Get ready. The stellar wind darted through the asteroid field, the pirate ships closing in with every second. Trent's hands moved quickly, preparing the crystals for release. His pulse raced as Zilla counted down over the comms. 3, 2, 1. Now. Trent hit the ejector, releasing the cargo into the void. Zyla's ship fired a precise shot at the crystals as they scattered, and the resulting explosion lit up the darkness. Like a miniature supernova, the shockwave sent the pirate ships spiraling out of control, their engines flickering and dying. Direct hit, chip reported. All enemy vessels disabled. Trent let out a breath. He hadn't realized he was holding. Nice shooting, Zyla. Remind me not to underestimate you again. Don't worry, Zyla replied, her voice laced with humor. I won't let you forget. As the two ships resumed their course, the tension in Trent's chest began to ease for the first time. He felt like they might actually stand a chance, not just against the Syndicate, but against whatever else the galaxy decided to throw their way. The quiet hum of the stellar wind's engines was all that filled the air as Trent guided the ship toward Rara 9. Outside, the stars seemed brighter after the chaos of the pirate attack, as if the universe itself were giving them a brief reprieve. Trent leaned back in his seat, trying to relax, but his mind wouldn't stop racing. The pirates were bad enough, but the looming threat of the Syndicate added an extra layer of danger to their journey. He glanced at the comms panel, waiting for Zyla's inevitable check-in. She didn't strike him as the type to let a quiet moment pass without a comment. Sure enough, her voice crackled through the speakers. A few minutes later. You're awfully quiet, Trent. Don't tell me you're actually taking this seriously, are? He smirked, leaning forward to respond. Just savoring the silence before you start bossing me around again. I'm not bossing you around, Zyla shot back. I'm ensuring we don't end up as space debris. Big difference. Trent shook his head, a grin tugging at his lips. Admit it, Zyla, you're starting to enjoy having me around. Her silence lasted a beat too long, and when she finally responded, there was a faint edge of amusement in her tone. Let's just say you're growing on me like a particularly persistent fungus. Trent laughed, the sound echoing through the cockpit. I'll take it. So what's the plan when we get to Ryar and N9? Just walk into the research outpost and hand over the relic. Not exactly, Zyla replied. The outpost is neutral ground, but the Syndicate has spies everywhere. We need to be careful about who we talk to. Luckily, I got a contact there who can help us. She's an expert in ancient tech, and she owes me a favor. Trent raised an eyebrow. A favor? What kind of favor? The kind you don't ask about, Zyla said curtly. Just trust me. All right, trust you. Trent leaned back, fighting shock. You've spent the last few hours calling me idiot, and now you want me to trust you. If I didn't think you were useful, I wouldn't have bothered saving your sorry hide, Zyla replied, her tone half serious. Besides, I could have handled those pirates on my own. Oh really? Trent teased, because it seemed like you were pretty glad to have me around back there. Don't push your luck, Trent, Zyla said, but there was a hint of a smile in her voice. The banter helped ease the tension. As the two ships continued their journey, the looming threat of the Syndicate momentarily forgotten. It wasn't long before the distinctive outline of Ramar 9 appeared on their sensors, a small rocky planet with a thin atmosphere and a network of research facilities scattered across its surface. All right, we're here, Zyla said, her voice all business. Now follow my lead. The outpost is in a canyon on the planet's southern hemisphere. It's well hidden, but that won't stop the Syndicate from sniffing around if we make too much noise. Understood, Trent replied, adjusting the stellar wind's course to match Zyas. Lead the way, Captain. Zyla didn't dignify his comment with a response, instead transmitting the coordinates to the outpost. Trent studied the data as he followed her ship into the planet's atmosphere, the view outside the cockpit shifting from the vastness of space to the dusty reddish terrain of Rara 9 jagged cliffs and deep canyons crisscrossed the landscape, creating a natural labyrinth that seemed impossible to navigate without precise coordinates. The outpost came into view as they descended into one of the large canyons, a cluster of interconnected domes and towers nestled against the canyon wall. It looked almost abandoned with no visible activity on the surface. But Trent knew better than to assume it wasn't heavily guarded as they landed on a small platform near the largest dome. Zyla's voice came through the cowls again. "Stay close, and let me do the talking. My contact doesn't trust humans." "Great," Trent muttered. "I'll just stand here and look pretty." Zyla didn't respond, but he could have sworn he heard her stifle aloud. Before cutting the connection a few minutes later, they met outside the stellar wind, the reddish dust of Rara 9. Clinging to their boots, Zyla carried herself with her usual confidence, her small frame somehow managing to radiate authority as she led the way toward the outpost's main entrance. Trent followed close behind, resisting the urge to crack a joke about her being in charge. The entrance was a large reinforced door set into the canyon wall, guarded by a pair of hulking alien sentinels. They towered over Zyla, their leathery skin and glowing eyes giving them an intimidating presence. But she didn't falter as she approached them. "Code word," one of the sentinels growled, his voice deep and rumbling. "Stardust," Zyla replied smoothly. "I'm here to see Dr. Ryan." The sentinel studied her for a moment before nodding and stepping aside. The door hissed open, revealing the dimly lit corridor that led into the heart of the outpost. "Friendly bunch," Trent muttered as they stepped inside. "They not here to be friendly," Zyla said, glancing over her shoulder. "Keep your mouth shut and let me handle this." Trent held up his hands in mock surrender. "Yes, ma'am." The corridor led to a spacious laboratory filled with equipment that looked both advanced and ancient, a strange blend of modern technology and relics from long-lost civilizations. At the center of it all was a tall, willowy alien woman with silver skin and glowing blue eyes. She looked up as they entered, her expression shifting from curiosity to mild annoyance. The woman said, her voice smooth but cold. "I wasn't expecting you, Rihanna." Zyla replied, her tone neutral. "I need your help." The alien woman, Rihanna, crossed her arms, her gaze shifting to Trent. "And who's this, your pet human?" Trent opened his mouth to respond, but Zyla shot him a warning look. "He's with me," she said firmly, "and he's not important. What matters is this." She reached into her satchel and pulled out the HFY relic, holding it up for Ryan to see. The alien woman's eyes widened slightly, her calm demeanor cracking for just a moment. "Where did you get that?" Ryan asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "It doesn't matter," Zyla said. "What matters is that the Syndicate wants it, and we need to know why. Can you decode it?" Ryan hesitated, her gaze flickering between Zyla and the relic. "This is dangerous, Zyla. If the Syndicate is involved." "I know the risks," Zyla interrupted, "but I don't have a choice. Can you help us or not?" For a long moment Rihanna said nothing, then she sighed, her shoulders sagging slightly. "All right, but this won't be easy. Follow me." As Ryan led them deeper into the laboratory, Trent exchanged a glance with Zyla. He didn't say anything, but the unspoken question hung between them. What exactly had they gotten themselves into? The deeper they ventured into Ryan's laboratory, the stranger the environment became. Ancient artifacts were suspended in protective stasis fields, glowing softly as if alive. Some pulsed faintly as though responding to their movements, while others seemed eerily dormant. The air was thick with a metallic tang, the kind of scent that hinted at machinery working far beyond its recommended lifespan. Trent glanced at Zyla, his curiosity getting the better of him. "This place looks like it's one spark away from exploding. Is that normal?" "Quiet," Zyla hissed, her tone clipped. "Ryan doesn't like distractions." Ryan stopped abruptly and turned, her glowing blue eyes narrowing. "He's right. You know, half of this equipment is held together by ingenuity and sheer luck. But unless you want to contribute to my maintenance budget, I suggest you keep your comments to yourself." Trent raised his hands in mock surrender. "Noted." "Carry on." The alien scientist leaded them to a central workstation where a massive circular table displayed a holographic map of the galaxy. Surrounding it were tools and devices Trent couldn't begin to identify, all humming with activity. Rihanna gestured for them to place the HFY relic in the center of the table, Let's see what you've dragged me into this time, Scylla, she muttered, taking a seat, and activating the console. Holographic symbols swirled around the artifact, and the table emitted a faint hum as it began. Analyzing the object, Trent watched the display, his fascination growing with every passing second. What exactly are you doing? He asked. Decoding, Ryan replied without looking up. The artifact is transmitting an encrypted signal. My job is to break that encryption and figure out what it's trying to tell us. And how long will that take? Scylla asked, crossing her arms. Rihanna shot her a withering look. Decoding ancient technology isn't like haggling over fruit at a market, Scylla. It takes time. You'll have to be patient. Scylla frowned, but didn't argue. Instead, she leaned against the wall, her golden eyes fixed on the artifact, as if willing it to reveal its secrets faster. Trent, meanwhile, couldn't resist poking around. He wandered over to a nearby shelf, lined with more artifacts, each one